When you stand in Nogales, Arizona, and look through the steel fence into Nogales, Sonora, you realize how thin the line between two worlds really is. The United States and Mexico share nearly 2,000 miles of border, dotted with more than 45 official crossings and hundreds of informal ones. For outsiders, this border is about immigration debates and politics. For locals, it is simply life. Every day, around 350,000 people legally cross the U.S.-Mexico border to work, shop, study, or see family. Alongside them, billions in goods move back and forth, with trade totaling over $860 billion annually. But behind these staggering numbers lie human stories of separation, resilience, survival, and dreams. Our guide through this world is Miguel Hernandez, a 36-year-old schoolteacher in El Paso, Texas. Miguel was born in Ciudad Juárez, just across the river, but his parents brought him to the U.S. when he was a boy. His classroom today includes children who cross the border daily, kids who live in Mexico but attend school in America. Through Miguel's eyes, we'll see what it means to grow up, survive, and build hope in America's border towns, communities that exist in two nations at once. Miguel remembers his childhood as a life split in two. His grandmother lived in Juárez, while his parents worked in El Paso. Visiting her meant standing in line at the border crossing for hours. Sometimes I'd wave at her through the fence, he recalls. I could see her, but not hug her. This is the daily reality for thousands. Families are divided by immigration status, by paperwork, or simply by geography. In fact, surveys show that over 15% of households in El Paso have close relatives living permanently in Mexico. The wall for them is not just a political symbol. It's a barrier to family dinners, birthdays, and even funerals. Yet the fence never truly separates lives. Children in Juárez often cross into El Paso for school. As many as 20,000 Mexican students are estimated to cross legally every day. They wake up in Mexico, study in America, and return home at night, carrying two identities at once. Miguel saw this firsthand in his own classroom. One of his brightest students, Ana, traveled across the bridge from Juárez every morning with her worn backpack. Her English was perfect, Miguel says, but she still felt like she belonged nowhere. Too Mexican for the U.S., too American for Mexico. Growing up between fences creates both opportunity and loss. It gives children bilingual skills, cultural flexibility, and resilience. But it also places them under constant scrutiny. Every day they face border guards, security checks, and questions of identity. For Miguel, that was the defining truth of childhood. Always waiting in line, always proving who you were, always caught between two worlds. In the early 2000s, Ciudad Juárez became infamous. At the peak of cartel wars in 2010, the city recorded 3,766 homicides in a single year, nearly 11 murders per day. For context, El Paso, its American neighbor just across the Rio Grande, had fewer than 10. The contrast was staggering. One side of the river was called the safest city in America, while the other was labeled the murder capital of the world. Miguel was in college during those years, and he still remembers the sound of gunfire echoing across the border. We could see the smoke from shootings in Juárez while sitting safely in El Paso, he recalls. It felt unreal, like watching two movies at once. Many of his childhood friends in Juárez were forced to make impossible choices. Some joined cartels out of desperation, others fled north. Javier, a boy Miguel once played soccer with, disappeared at 17. His family still doesn't know if he was recruited, killed, or simply ran away. Despite the horror, Juárez survived. Today, Homicide numbers are down to around 1,200 per year, still high, but far below the peak. Community groups organize art projects. Women's collectives fight back against violence. And young musicians like Javier's cousin use music to tell their stories. But the scars remain. Ask anyone in El Paso, and they'll tell you that Juárez is not just a neighbor. It's a mirror. Whatever happens there echoes here. For Miguel, the lesson was painful. Safety and danger can exist side by side, separated by nothing more than a river and a wall.
If violence divides, trade unites.
The U.S.-Mexico border is one of the busiest in the world, and towns like Laredo and El Paso live off its constant flow. In 2024, the Laredo port of entry handled more than $250 billion in goods, everything from avocados and tomatoes to car parts and electronics. Miguel often tells his students that their sneakers and laptops likely crossed the border before they did. When you buy a car in the U.S., there's a good chance the seats were stitched in Mexico, the engine was assembled in Detroit, and the steering wheel was finished in Juárez, he explains. It's not American or Mexican, it's both. But the numbers also reveal inequality. While the average American factory worker earns about $23 per hour, Mexican maquiladora workers make closer to $3.50 an hour. Rosa, a single mother Miguel knows from Juárez, spends 10-hour shifts sewing car seat covers. I can't afford the car I helped build, she says, but my work keeps my children in school. For border towns, this economy is a double-edged sword. Trade brings jobs, but also heavy truck traffic, pollution, and dependency. If Washington tightens policies or trade deals collapse, thousands lose work overnight. Miguel's own school has seen children drop out when parents lost maquiladora jobs. And yet, the border economy never stops. Every day, over 14,000 trucks cross in Laredo alone. For residents like Miguel, this constant movement is the heartbeat of border life. Steady, powerful, and impossible to ignore.
Ask Miguel what makes border towns unique, and he won't mention walls or checkpoints. He'll talk about food, music, and language. We don't just live between countries, he says. We live in both at once. Border towns are cultural mosaics. In El Paso, you can order brisket tacos, a mix of Texas barbecue and Mexican tradition. In Brownsville, restaurants serve breakfast plates where tamales share space with pancakes. Even language fuses into Spanglish, a border dialect where sentences flip between English and Spanish effortlessly. Numbers reflect this blend. Nearly 80% of El Paso's population identifies as Hispanic or Latino, and more than 70% speak Spanish at home. Yet they also celebrate the 4th of July, attend NFL games, and dream of Harvard or UCLA. This duality defines identity. One of Miguel's students, Sophia, once said it best. I don't feel 50% Mexican and 50% American. I feel 100% border. Her mural project, painted on a school wall, shows two hands reaching through the fence, exchanging a flower. It's a symbol of resilience, of families refusing to let steel separate their traditions. In a world obsessed with division, border towns quietly prove the opposite. Culture cannot be fenced in. Border towns face poverty rates far higher than the U.S. average. In Brownsville, Texas, about 30% of residents live below the poverty line compared to the national average of 11%. Schools are underfunded, healthcare is limited, and many families rely on cross-border relatives for survival. But what defines these communities is not despair, It's resilience. Churches organize free meal programs. Local nonprofits help migrants with housing. Neighbors share what little they have. Miguel himself volunteers at a shelter, tutoring children who just arrived from Central America. Then there are people like Eduardo, a retired Border Patrol officer who now runs a food bank. He spent 25 years enforcing immigration laws, but says his perspective changed. You can't work here your whole life and not see the humanity, he says. Borders are made of steel, but people are made of hope. Despite hardships, border towns endure. They adapt to changing trade deals, to shifts in cartel violence, to U.S. elections that reshape policy overnight. Survival here means flexibility. In language, in work, in identity. Miguel sums it up. Living here teaches you one thing. Nothing is permanent. But family, culture, and resilience, those are stronger than walls.
Border towns are not just places on a map. They are living contradictions. They are poor yet culturally rich, dangerous yet full of resilience, divided yet inseparably connected. The numbers tell part of the story. Billions in trade, thousands of daily crossings, poverty rates double the national average. But it's the people, like Miguel, Rosa, Sofia, and Eduardo, who bring the truth to life. They show us that the border is not simply about politics or immigration. It is about humanity, caught between two nations, surviving and thriving despite every obstacle. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.